This is In the Loop. I'm Cody LeGros, and it's Wednesday. Hopefully, your week is less chaotic than the New York City mayoral race. Tonight, is legalizing drugs the best way to fight addiction and overdose? Some experts say yeah. We dig into that thought process and why it might not be as unusual as it sounds. Then, historically, Catholicism and the LGBTQ community have not gone hand in hand, but one Chicago neighborhood is helping bridge that divide by welcoming in everyone, no matter who they love. But first, here's what you need to know right now. The death toll continues to climb in the Surfside condo collapse. An overwhelming number of people are still missing as the search wraps up its 7th day. Friends and family members of the missing have been waiting anxiously for every update. The crews currently on the scene include some of the world's most skilled emergency responders who have worked on other disasters like earthquakes and hurricanes. Overnight, rescuers were able to find some spaces large enough to crawl into.
So the balconies between them remained a big space of air that we crawled in those tunnels.
Rainstorms in Florida have already slowed down the search, and the next couple of days could be even worse. With the possibility of severe weather, the state's resources could be stretched thin. Florida officials have asked for additional federal resources to help, and the president plans to visit Surfside tomorrow. The sweltering heat wave took a deadly toll on parts of Canada. In British Columbia, which is on the country's west coast, more than 230 deaths have been reported over just 4 days. Experts are calling it unprecedented, and I know that word has been used a lot over the last year, but it's just fitting for these temps, which are not normal for the region.
In this instance, I think the big lesson coming out of the past number of days is that the climate crisis is not a fiction, it is absolutely real.
In the northwest part of the U.S., the heat melted some power lines, caused streets to buckle, and sent hundreds to the hospital, bringing the issue of climate change to the forefront.
We have to attack the source of this problem because this climate is changing so fast in my state. It is hurting the fundamental aspects of our culture and our economy.
If you haven't gotten the COVID shot yet, the U.S. Surgeon General has a message for you.
If you are not vaccinated, then you are in trouble.
The Delta variant now makes up 1 in 5 cases of COVID-19 in the U.S., and Dr. Anthony Fauci said the divide between places with high and low vaccination rates could lead to a tale of two Americas. That concern over the Delta variant is leading to a new mask debate across the country. Out west, the Los Angeles County Public Health Department is recommending all residents to wear masks in public indoor spaces, even if they've been fully vaccinated for COVID-19. But in New York, Mayor de Blasio said the city has no current plan to revisit mask requirements as the Delta variant spreads throughout the country. I know, you're like, again? But remember, progress is not linear. If you are fully vaxxed, science says you're relatively safe, and the mask is more a precaution as they figure out how the Delta variant is spreading. The focus here is maximum protection with minimum interruption, aka you don't have to social distance or keep the party small, but wearing a mask when you don't know everyone's vaccination status can lower transmission. Today, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said it's leaving it up to state and local health departments to set mask guidelines. In May, the CDC said that fully vaccinated Americans no longer needed to mask indoors or social distance. All right, here's the question. Is alcohol legal because it's safer, or is it safer because it's legal? That's the question one man is posing as he's advocating for drug legalization. Newsy's Bianca Pascini looked into how we're re-examining our current approach to treating addiction.
America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse.
It's been 50 years since President Richard Nixon declared a war on drugs, increasing policing and punishments in an effort to curb drug use and save lives. But some say it's done the opposite.
Any legal regulated anything is safer than anything illicit.
In his new book, David Poses details his 16-year-long heroin addiction. Since he became sober, he's been advocating for legalization, which he says would be much more effective in lowering the sky-high overdose rate.
We think alcohol is legal because it's safer. Alcohol is actually safer because it's legal. It can kill you more ways than all other drugs combined.
Poses joins some addiction experts who say legalization, and therefore regulation, is our best bet against overdoses and addiction. and they often point to alcohol to support that thesis.
We had tens of thousands of Americans who were maimed or killed from drinking tainted alcohol or poisonous alcohol. When we reversed or overturned prohibition, those numbers, they dramatically decrease.
Proponents say it could work just like legal cannabis in their own shops with established rules like age or residency requirements. And these shops could offer testing to eliminate drugs laced with deadly ingredients like fentanyl and to determine potency.
But the push to legalization has plenty of critics. Many of them say there's already more than enough evidence to prove it would be more harmful than helpful.
The legal company was called Purdue Pharma. The legal opioid was called OxyContin. And in the space of 10 years, it ruined more lives than the illegal drug heroin had in the past century. So we've been there and we've done that.
It's unclear how much support there'd be on Capitol Hill for legalization. But during the 2020 election, Oregon became the first state to decriminalize small amounts of drugs, including heroin and cocaine. And 18 states have already legalized marijuana, reflecting a shift in attitude on drug use, including drinking.
We just accept that alcohol is perfectly fine and drugs aren't, and that's just not the case.
Experts may disagree on legalization, but most of them acknowledge a change in approach is necessary, in particular when it comes to law enforcement.
It's a bad idea, in my opinion, say, to take somebody who's been caught in possession of, say, fentanyl or heroin for their own use and throw them into a jail cell. When you do that, you are putting their life at significant risk. You are not deterring use by anyone else. You are wasting a lot of resources.
Bianca Fascini, Newsy, Washington.
Coming up, put on your Sunday best. We're going to gay church. Bill Cosby was released from prison after the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned his sexual assault conviction Wednesday. The 83-year-old comedian had been convicted of drugging and molesting a woman at his home. Today's ruling barred any further prosecution. Newsy's Jamal Andrus explains how we got here.
Bill Cosby was released from a Pennsylvania prison Wednesday after the state Supreme Court overturned his 2018 sexual assault conviction. Cosby was the first celebrity to be convicted as a part of the Me Too era. Cosby was convicted of drugging and sexually assaulting Andrea Constant, a former Temple University employee. He was sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison and had served nearly 3 years of that sentence. Constant's accusation was one of dozens against the longtime actor and comedian. 5 different women testified against Cosby during his 2018 trial, recounting what they described as their own sexual assault experiences. Constant said in an open letter about the incident that Cosby, quote, took my beautiful, healthy, young spirit and crushed it. Pennsylvania's highest court ruled the conviction against Cosby must be vacated based on a prior agreement made by the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office to not criminally charge Cosby in exchange for his potentially incriminating testimony in a separate civil case. While Cosby did testify in that case and settled with Constant for $3.4 million, there was no evidence that a promise between Cosby and the Montgomery County DA was ever put in writing. The PA Supreme Court called the ruling severe and rare, but also warranted, in a court filing announcing its decision. Montgomery County DA Kevin Steele, who led the prosecution of Cosby, said he was being released on a procedural issue and called this agreement with Cosby irrelevant to the facts of the crime. Cosby, once known as America's Dad, spent 50 years in the entertainment industry, starring in movies, stand-up specials, and commercials. The sitcom bearing his name ran for 8 seasons and spent 5 of those seasons as the #1 rated show on television. According to prosecutors, Cosby often used his fame and family man persona to manipulate women, presenting himself as a mentor before drugging and assaulting them. Jamal Andrus, Newsy.
It's no surprise when policy is behind public opinion. Just look at the Catholic Church. Its official stance is that homophobic relationships are wrong. But a majority of U.S. Catholics have backed same-sex marriage for a decade. Newsy's Kat Sandoval takes us to a Chicago community that's leading by example by saying, God is love, and whoever loves God must also love his brother, even the gay ones.
The Catholic Church isn't known for welcoming the LGBTQ community, and the church as a whole is still officially homophobic, describing gay relationships as deviant behavior.
I don't think that's a Christian message at all. I mean, a Christian message, let alone Catholic.
But here in Chicago's Rainbow neighborhood of North Halsted, you'll find two LGBTQ communities that have been practicing Catholicism for decades. In this space, we spoke with parishioners of Aglow, the Archdiocesan Gay and Lesbian Outreach.
My relationship with God actually grew stronger by coming out, just because I was able to just be myself authentically.
In this service, a Catholic priest celebrates Mass in a church full of LGBTQ community. Publicly, Aglow doesn't dispute church teachings, but privately, some of the members are hoping to change the homophobic rhetoric from the larger Catholic community.
My part of the Catholic Church, and you heard it tonight, God is love. I mean, it's not that judgment.
According to the Gallup poll from 2016 to 2020, U.S. Catholics support same-sex marriage more so than the national average.
Through baptism, we become a member of the church, and no one can take that away from you.
Originally, Aglow was part of a larger LGBTQ Catholic group called Dignity. But in the late 1980s, Dignity challenged the Vatican's stance on homosexuality and was forced out of the church. Now they hold Mass right here in the Methodist Church just around the corner.
The core of our mission is to affirm same-sex relationships as being life-giving and life-affirming.
We are all called and we are all loved, and we all should be surrounded in God's table, around God's table.
Reverend Kathy Rollins is an unrecognized priest by the Catholic Church standards, but she's accepted at Dignity. She preaches and recognizes this LGBTQ community that's been largely ostracized by the church.
You have to truly believe that you've done nothing wrong. You are a blessing from God.
Dignity and Aglow differ in their response to church rulings that homosexuality and same-sex marriage are sinful, but there's no animosity between both organizations.
We're very much both Catholic communities of faith, but from different perspectives.
For Newsy, I'm Kat Sandoval in Chicago.
Coming up, the comeback you don't want, student loan payments. We'll see you on the other side. Trust. I know it's been nice not hearing from Miss Sally Mae, but soon enough, she's going to be asking for your student loan payments to start up again. Here's Chris Stewart on what to expect.
I'm a first-generation student. My family is a family of immigrants.
Even though my nuclear family didn't have, a history of completing college, but I knew for me that was my pathway out.
College is a defining moment in life. But many Americans will tell you its cost has truly defined its impact on theirs.
While it was a great experience, I made great network connections, I learned a lot. After I finished, I found that employers weren't really offering much by way of competitive salaries for that degree. And I found myself wondering, was it even worth getting that degree?
I was raised in poverty.
Where Tyrone Hanley grew up, college is not a guarantee.
My mom raised us in Section 8 housing.
He overcame the odds and went on to graduate law school. But the journey to a better life has a price.
Right now, it's over $200,000 in student debt.
I wouldn't go to grad school again. I would do undergrad again, but I would probably prioritize the schools that had offered me, the state schools that had offered me a more reasonable financial package.
Jessica Gowrich says it's hard to think of the future when she's still paying for what it took to earn undergraduate and graduate degrees.
How can I even think about bringing a child into this world when I've got almost $100K in debt?
More than 44 million Americans are in student loan debt, which is larger than the entire population of California. But during the pandemic, the government put a pause on borrowers having to make payments on federal student loans.
I've been able to put that money aside for my savings, and now I have more savings than I ever had in my entire life.
October could be an unwelcome return to normal. Borrowers will have to start making payments again.
I went to law school
And my parents couldn't afford to send me to college.
DC Council member Janice Lewis George still carries tens of thousands of dollars of student debt herself.
For many of us, we had no other option, and we were sold a dream. With a big price tag.
African American college graduates owe, on average, $25,000 more than college grads who are white.
In the Black community, it just feels like student loan debt is literally stifling our ability to even be able to attain even just an inch of wealth or progress as a community.
She introduced a resolution in her city that was unanimously approved by the council, calling on President Biden to cancel student loan debt. Cities like Boston and Philadelphia have done the same.
We're trying to make this a national push. So what's next is sending our resolution to other cities across this country and saying, hey, let's stand together in solidarity and let this administration know that student loan debt is a crisis.
Critics point to the cost of forgiving student loans and say it's unfair to let those with debt off the hook.
You need to go to college, and in many cases, you need to go to graduate school in order to get a decent income, especially if you're someone like me who grew up poor.
My parents didn't know how to advise me in this process. I didn't have anyone guiding me on, how to fill out my FAFSA or what was a good scholarship amount or what's a good loan or what's a good interest rate. These were things I didn't understand until years later.
It's easy to point to numbers to show how big of an issue student debt is. Those with it say to see its true toll, look to the people within its grip.
I think through our stories, people really can have a better understanding from an emotional and human level to really wrap their heads around this issue and to understand what my generation and younger generations are dealing with in this moment.
We always enjoy hearing from you at home, so tell us what you love, what you hate, what you want more of. Tweet at us using the hashtag Newsy in the Loop. We'll be right back. A federal program was designed to get $5 billion to farmers of color, something that would have helped struggling farmers during the pandemic. But no money has been distributed yet because some white people are suing the government, claiming race discrimination, despite centuries of racism faced by black farmers. Here's Bo Evans in Virginia.
A new program was supposed to send billions of dollars in aid to farmers of color, but lawsuits across the country have blocked it for now. No one needs to tell John Boyd Jr. that farming is hard work. But he loves it.
I love it. There's no greater feeling right now than me. In this track, it's hot as hell. It's 100 degrees. And I'm in it with no air conditioning. But I wouldn't change it for nothing in the world.
The sun is beating down on his farm in Southern Virginia, where his to-do list seems to go on forever.
The work never ends, and there's something always to do. And nothing never goes out the way you set it.
That can be said about farming. It can also be said for the rollout of a federal program. The $2 trillion COVID relief package passed this spring contained about $5 billion earmarked for the USDA loan relief for farmers of color. More than 13,000 farmers of color have more than $2 billion in outstanding loans from the USDA. But no money has been distributed to these farmers yet, and it won't be until some lawsuits get sorted out.
We filed this lawsuit on behalf of 12 farmers from 9 different states because we believe that the Constitution forbids race discrimination. The Constitution has a provision called the Equal Protection Doctrine, which says that all Americans need to be treated equally regardless of their race.
Dan Lennington is deputy counsel for the Wisconsin Institute of Law and Liberty. In the lawsuit, he's talking about a judge granted a preliminary injunction against the federal aid program in Wisconsin. A judge in a similar suit in Florida granted a nationwide injunction, and suits are pending in other states as well.
It bothered us so bad, we went to court with it. That's the message white farmers are sending to me.
John says it's just another gut punch in a long line of racism black farmers have faced for centuries.
We were slaves on American soil. We were sharecroppers on American soil, and we survived the horrific laws of Jim Crow. And they led to a lot of land loss for black farmers in this country after the Civil War.
He says he wants what's fair and that farmers of color have been left out of aid in the past. Dan says he doesn't necessarily disagree with that.
He's correct on a number of things. He's correct that there has been a history of discrimination against black farmers. He's wrong on what should be done. He's not wrong on what has happened.
His clients don't want the aid to be based on race.
They say, I just want to be treated equally. I don't want my loan forgiven. I don't want special treatment. But if there is a program to forgive loans, what I would like is a chance to apply for that just like anybody else. In that if the government has some sort of criteria for who they're going to help, that criteria can be whatever the government wants it to be, but it shouldn't be based on race.
Until there's a solution, John will continue to fight for American farmers of color.
You come here, you work hard. It's the greatest country in the world. It rewards people that work and want to do great. That's what America is. It can't be that for just some people.
In Baskerville, Virginia, with photojournalist Drew Snadicki, I'm Bo Evans reporting.
Thank you for watching In the Loop. It was truly a pleasure spending some time with you this evening. I'm Cody LeGros. Top stories from Newsy are headed your way right now.